Welcome to Heel Heat Reviews. This is our third installment. Today we're going to be speaking about a DVD put out by WWE. My name is George Coles. This is my tag team partner Blackjack Lanza.
Thanks, Mulligan.
And the DVD that we're going to be reviewing today is
Bobby Heenan.
You guys, we let you guys vote. This was a winning vote by a landslide. So we're going to talk about the Bobby the Brain Heenan DVD. Before we get started into that, we'll give you guys...
Sankara happened.
We'll give you guys a little bit of a background on Bobby before we talk about the actual DVD. Bobby, if you're not familiar with his work, is probably the best manager of all time.
There's no problem.
No, anyway, he's probably the best manager of all time. No arguments there. But you know, the list of guys he managed. And for those of you who are too young to remember managers, they were actually an important part of wrestlers that didn't have so much talking talent. And some of Bobby's guys did have talking talent. He just gave me extra rub. But I'll basically read it off. These guys are all in the WWE Hall of Fame, and they were managed by Heenan. Nick Bockwinkel, the Blackjacks.
Sergeant
Slaughter, the Valiant Brothers, Baron von Raschke, Ernie Ladd, Big John Studd,
Paul Orndorff,
Harley Race, Andre the Giant,
Mr. Perfect,
the Brainbusters, Ric Flair, and the Fabulous Moolah. I mean, if you read that list, that's pretty much a who's who of wrestling in the 70s and 80s.
And you got a third of the Hall of Fame in there.
Pretty much. And that's not including Bobby himself. Mm-hmm. Bobby himself is in the Hall of Fame.
The people he worked with, Gorilla Monsoon.
And Gorilla. And, you know, we're going to talk about, you know, some of the stuff off of the DVD, but the DVD itself, it starts off with his early run, his early career, starting off in Chicago, and how pretty much he had to make money to support him, his mother, and his grandmother.
Yeah, he didn't have a dad, so he took care of them, and, you know, everybody loved Bobby for it. He said, they said in the DVD, he'd come back with all these stories and stuff like that, and one wrestler came to him. He said, "If you didn't take care of your mom and grandmother, I'd kill you."
Yeah, and you know that shows a little bit of the person behind Heenan, and from everything you hear about the backstage stuff with him, he was a great guy outside of the ring. Probably one of the best heels, manager or otherwise, ever.
Best. In my opinion, the best.
I personally think he's the best. Probably the best talker that's ever been in the business.
Oh yeah.
And then, you know, you go from the early run, it goes into his AWA career when he managed Stevens and Bockwinkel, the Blackjacks, Ken Patera.
Yeah, but, you know, the thing is, when he brought him in with Stevens and Bockwinkel, they didn't really need a talker. Bockwinkel handled the talking, but he made that team so much better.
Yeah.
You know, 3 lines are better than 1.
Especially when one's the brain. But then you got, you know, these guys... All these guys, he had a solid run over there in the AWA. It's, you know, a little bit lesser known, lesser followed by today's wrestling fans. But the AWA, if you get a chance to watch it, I know ESPN Classic runs it at midnight. It's not every night. I've set it on my DVR to DVR it. So if you got DVR capabilities, DVR AWA, some of them are brutal, some of them are hard to watch.
The later ones are brutal. I'll get with that, you know.
But and it's a little bit slower paced matches, but there's some amazing talent that came out of the AWA. Hulk Hogan,
Rock and Roll Buck Zumhofe,
the Midnight Rocker, Shawn Michaels, Marty Jannetty, Mr. Perfect.
Mr. Perfect, his father Larry the X. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, there's a lot of guys.
Ric
Flair was actually trained by
the AWA, by Vern Gagne. And, you know, it's a fantastic promotion. Money problems bit them in the ass in the end. That's another DVD to talk about altogether one day. But, you know, it goes into his AWA career. It doesn't cover it much. Again, it's a WWE produced DVD. And the trend on these is they talk about the WWE portion of their career more than anything else.
Oh yeah, well I mean the WCW part of the DVD lasted 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, and he was there 5 years, or actually more, about 7 years.
7 years.
But then you got after his AWA run, and it's covered in the DVD. This was something I didn't know, and I'm a wrestling historian. Well, I mean I read about it all the time. He was brought into the WWF to manage Jesse the Body Ventura. And then Jesse had the injury that ended his career, and Bobby ended up getting put with Stud instead of Ventura. But could you imagine what the run would have been with Heenan and Ventura?
Oh, well, they're both great talkers. Ventura, at one point could be one of the most hated guys in the business.
Oh, yeah.
And you add, Bobby with that, and it's just pandemonium.
Exactly. They could have. I mean, the WWF did big business anyway, but that would have been another solid, credible opponent for Hulk Hogan back in that day. Right along with Piper and the guys that eventually came along. Then, you go from what's them talking about his early career with guys like Stud and Bundy and Wonderful, and then you go right into the run he had with Andre the Giant.
Well, when they paired them two together, he actually helped make Andre a legitimate heel, because it was going to take a lot to make the most beloved character for 30 years one of the most hated guys to go against Hulk Hogan.
Right. And more than just ripping the shirt off and scratching his chest.
Dude, you got blood.
But yeah, and that's another thing. Talking about guys getting a rub from Heenan, or who do you think got the biggest rub in their career, like from Heenan?
Someone that got to a higher level from Heenan. I mean, I think he helped Perfect out a lot. Perfect could have done a lot on his own, but I think with Heenan with him, he did a lot better. So I'd say Perfect.
You think Perfect? That's a good one. I personally think King Kong Bundy.
Now, I would say if they would have worked together, but the guy didn't want to work with him as much, Rick Rude would have had a hell of a push.
Yeah.
I mean, they were main eventing him and stuff like that. If they were working together and happy behind the scenes, I think they could have made big money together.
See, in my opinion, it was Bundy, because Bundy headlined a WrestleMania.
Mm-hmm.
Back when he was only the second person to ever do it, other than Hulk Hogan.
Yes.
He was in the second WrestleMania main event, and this
First title match,
and this was a guy that really wasn't anything special. I mean, he was a decent worker, but at that time, you had guys like One Man Gang, Bam Bam Bigelow. There were
big guys that had a lot of talent.
Guys his size that could move were a dime a dozen. I mean, Kamala, Abdullah the Butcher. There was a ton of them out there working at the same time with basically the same gimmick. And the rub that he got from Heenan brought him into the main event against Hulk Hogan, because Heenan was always against Hogan.
Exactly.
And I think personally that was my opinion. Then you got the DVD. It talks a little bit. It goes into the Bobby Brain Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon teaming together
on the Tuesday Night Titans and such.
Yeah, on Tuesday Night Titans, and also on the
Primetime.
I thought they did Wrestling Challenge is what they did.
Wrestling Challenge, and they were awesome together. They are the best duo ever.
Bar none.
I mean, you can talk about Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler and all that. I mean, they're great, don't get me wrong, but those two just work so good together. It was just...
You're saying they're better than Michael Cole and Josh Matthews?
My personal opinion, they could make a DVD with just them two doing commentary and talking to each other.
Not even
the skits.
Matches.
Not even the matches, just the skits. But some of the skits they did were just, just classic.
And it's amazing that when people that get along, you could see how they riff off of each other and how they work together, and they were amazing together. I mean, they were funny when they needed to be. They were serious when they needed to be. Heenan always cheered the heels. Gorilla always stuck up for the baby faces. There was no gray line. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was tremendous. I think it's part of the reason why the WWF is as big as it is Gorilla and Heenan.
Mm-hmm. And then you take the talent that Heenan had. I mean, they said on the DVD, remember the Bobby Heenan show?
Yeah.
You know, they said a half hour just for him doing that show, and it was phenomenal. It was stuff that, you know, he could have had his own night talk show.
It was way better than Jay Leno's bullshit show.
Oh gosh.
You know, at that time, probably if they would have put him in against Johnny Carson, he might have took a dent out of Johnny's ratings.
Oh yeah, he was better than Arsenio. But you know, I honestly think those two were the best. And then
no wait, Arsenio had Hogan saying he never did steroids on there.
Not supposed to talk about that.
You remember that episode?
Yeah, I remember that episode.
That was horrible. And then they had a match, didn't they?
I try not to remember Arsenio too much. I don't try to remember too much of the early '90s.
Arsenio wasn't that bad. I mean, it was a show if you liked rap or rock music because no one else was bringing them on.
Rap's crap.
All right. But you know what I'm saying. Anyway, that's a different. We're not trying to talk about Arsenio Hall. But Bobby the Brain Heenan, if he would have had his own mainstream show instead of just a wrestling show, he beat the top-rated guy. The guy's just that funny and that smart.
Like I said, if they put a DVD of just him and Gorilla doing their skits together, and you don't have to be a wrestling fan, you would love it. I'm sorry, it's timeless.
Those guys are just funny. It's Abbott and Costello.
Yeah.
It's really all it breaks down to be is they're just another comedy team. They're Lewis and Martin. I mean, Abbott and Costello. They're amazing together.
Yeah, they're great. They're classic.
Yeah.
And I mean, like you said earlier, if it wasn't for them two, there would be. I don't think the WWF would have been as popular. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's another. It's another. Heenan's another guy like Roddy Piper that doesn't get the credit he deserves for making the WWF what it is. Everybody says it's Vince and Hawk, which don't get me wrong, Vince and Hawk did a lot to bring it to its levels. But if Hulk Hogan didn't have credible opponents, Roddy Piper, Andre the Giant, King Kong Bundy,
anybody that was with Bobby.
Yeah, and no one would have cared if he was beating Steve Lombardi, and I know Heenan eventually managed him. If he was beating Steve Lombardi and Iron Mike Sharp every week, no one would have gave a crap.
But if he was wrestling them and Bobby's in their corner and he's going for Bobby, trying to kick Bobby's ass, it made for ratings.
Yeah. And that's what brought asses to the seats.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and he doesn't get the credit as much as he should. I know they give him a lot of credit, but I personally think if he's not the top heel ever, he's easily within the top 5. And I'm talking wrestler or manager.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's within the top 5 by far.
Oh yeah.
And you know, you can make an argument for guys like Ric Flair. I could get that. I mean.
There's Hollywood Hogan back in the 96, 97 era.
Yeah, but I wouldn't put him as the greatest heel ever. He didn't have quite as long as a heel run.
No.
Would he have about a 5-year run as a heel?
Yeah.
I mean,
or you take your heel Shawn Michaels. Anyways, any of those guys, it's like they were ripping him off in a way.
Yeah.
Most of your talking heels
ripped off Bobby.
They should, write him a thank you letter, send him a $5 check.
Every manager that's been out since him, well, the managers are dead now, but Abraham Washington was the last of a dying breed. But, I mean, then, after the Gorilla stuff, they went into the his WCW run, which they barely covered at all.
Like I said, about 5 minutes. That's one regret on the DVD. And I love the DVD, but they should have gone more in depth with that because, honestly, the Hogan turning heel at Bash at the Beach wouldn't have been as big without Heenan selling it.
That he did some good stuff there. I mean, the WWE tends to paint WCW as shit, but there was a lot of times that WCW was the better show.
Oh, there was.
That was putting out the better product.
Well, you look at it this way, why they want so many guys from there, your Benoits, your Malenkos, your Jerichos,
Goldberg. Everybody. They still want Sting. 12 years after it shut down.
Yeah, but none of those shows I don't think would have been as good without Bobby.
No. And Bobby made Monday Nitro. When they split it, what was it? They did half the show with Bobby and then half the show with
Mongo and him?
No, it was Zbyszko.
Zbyszko, yeah.
When they split the show, the Zbyszko half wasn't as entertaining.
No.
I'm just sorry.
Well, you hear a guy talking about himself the whole time, like with Zbyszko. With Bobby, he was talking about the other guys. He might have been talking trash about them, but he's talking about them. You're getting a Heenan rub either way.
And that's another thing. It's a noticeable trend on these DVDs that they're they're burying it, not really burying, but they're not talking about stuff that isn't WWE related. I'd like to see in later DVDs, maybe. And this is another thing about this one. If they would have this was about an hour on the documentary piece, not including the extras. If they would have gave this like some others like the Shawn Michaels one, they gave about 2 hours for the documentary. Dusty Rhodes got about 3.
Yeah, and he's done. I mean, he might have held championships or nothing like that, but he's managed champions. He's been in the business for well over 30 years. The guy deserved a 2-hour DVD.
And another thing that was missing, and I know he doesn't like to get on camera much with his, the way he talks now because of the throat cancer, but they didn't have anything with him.
No.
Talking about this is why this happened, this is why that happened. He should have been on there. He should have.
I think what they should have done with the WCW is they could have turned that into more of a shoot. If he wasn't, because he said he wasn't happy there.
No.
I would like to have known the reasons why. I mean, I know a lot of them. They didn't talk about this. I know Shivani. He didn't really care for Shivani at all.
And then they showed a little bit of the thing with Pillman, where Pillman touched his neck and he cursed at him on live TV.
Yeah.
But they didn't really show.
They never got fined for that or nothing, because I mean it's on cable.
Yeah.
But you figured they'd be like, oh, you got to pay this or something. It's Bobby Heenan.
And then they round out the end, basically the end of the documentary portion of the DVD. It shows him going in the Hall of Fame, which I think that's on the extras as well. His induction speech. That is something that is worth the DVD purchase itself. I mean, Bobby Heenan is in Bobby Heenan form.
Well, that WrestleMania was what WrestleMania was that? That was
it was 2004, so that would have been 21.
21. I bought that DVD just because of the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Just for Bobby Heenan.
And he's the reason that if you watch that Hall of Fame induction, it's still done in like a little hall, and now it's done in arenas, and he's the reason, because people actually started really wanting to see it almost as much as WrestleMania.
Oh yeah.
Some WrestleMania is more than WrestleMania, depending on who's going in. But it's a. I think my two complaints I have, two big complaints, is they didn't cover enough of his AWA and WCW runs, which were both. WCW is an announcer, so I can maybe give that a flub. But AWA, he was the biggest heel in AWA for 10 years.
Oh, exactly.
And they barely covered it. And the second biggest thing is they didn't get any new comments from Heenan for the DVD.
No.
They had his wife, they had his daughter, they had guys he managed. And with some people it makes sense. With Mr. Perfect it makes sense because by the time they made his DVD he was dead.
Passed.
But Heenan's alive and he can talk. He might not be able to talk like he used to, but I don't care. I want to see
better
Bobby.
than Michael Cole.
I want to see Bobby.
So yeah, I mean,
want to see. If he has to talk through a freaking voice box, I want to see Bobby, and I want to hear Bobby's opinion coming right from his mouth. And that was my two detractors that I had. Other than that, it's a fabulous DVD chronicling one of the biggest influences in all of wrestling ever.
So on this DVD, what would you give it as a rating?
I would say I'd give it a 4 out of 5 stars.
Yeah.
Personally. The only thing holding it back from being 5 stars are the two things that I mentioned.
I give it 4.5. Just 4.5 because my biggest thing is, like we said, his past AWA and WCW.
Yeah.
I mean, he was one of the biggest draws they ever had at AWA. I mean, he was the biggest draw before Hogan was, there or anything like that. Because people wanted to see him get that weasel suit put on or get his ass kicked or something. They wanted to see something to get done to Bobby.
Exactly.
And then with WCW, I want to see the shoot part. Because I know there has to be a good shoot in there.
Yep. But, and that is what it is. I mean, like I said, I gave it a 4. He gave it a 4.5. Again, it's an older DVD, so it could be picked up in bargain bins. It could be picked up on Amazon cheap. Definitely worth a buy. I would buy it again. If this breaks, if I happen to break this DVD, I'd buy it again. Because it's worth watching several times over. The extras are fabulous. Bobby's story is a great story.
The kid that had nothing,
that
quit school,
became something. But, that's basically all we have for this one. Now, again, it's your turn for your input, fans. This time, we're going to do it a little bit different. Instead of a best of DVD, which we have done for the first 3, we're going to do 2 WrestleManias, 2 pay-per-views. It's 2 different WrestleManias. Both of them have been, monumental WrestleManias. The first one is going to be Gary's pick.
WrestleMania 18, Hulk vs. Rock.
And then my pick is going to be a little bit older. WrestleMania 3, Andre versus Hogan. Either one, both great DVDs, both big main events.
Look, I didn't pull Sin Cara.
And for once you didn't botch that part. But they're both...
You're going to.
No, I was just bringing it over, make sure it's in screen. Both excellent. We're going to review that. Whichever one you guys vote on, we're going to watch it from beginning to end. We've seen them both already, but we're going to watch it again fresh and review it fresh. So let us know what you think. Hit us up on Facebook. Hit us up on Twitter. Put it down in the comments. Make sure you like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to this page.
Yeah, we try to keep it pretty interesting for everybody. And you know what? If there's some comments you want us to pick something up, just let us know.
Yeah, let us know how you feel. But basically, that's all we have for this review of the Bobby the Brain Heenan DVD. I'm George Coles.
Gary Rhodes.
And this has been a Heel Heat review.